Hi everyone, welcome to a short review of Maquette, a word which I had to look up on Google how to pronounce, because neither French nor English is actually my first language.
Maquette.
Maquette is a puzzle adventure game, developed by a studio called Graceful Decay and their first big release. It was published by Annapurna Interactive, which you might recognize publishing titles such as What Remains of Edith Finch and Outer Wilds, both great games. This game was originally released in March of 2021 for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 and Windows PC. Then another version was released for Nintendo Switch as well as Xbox, which launched in May and July this year respectively. That is when it popped up on Game Pass and I decided to pick it up. The game doesn't take very long to complete. It took me around 3.5 hours, but that was mostly due to getting stuck on stupid bugs and some other issues I had with the game. It is not a game that you would consider very friendly to replay, because the story, once completed, you actually know everything that's going to happen in the game. It doesn't have any alternate endings, it doesn't have any other content for you to discover. There are no specific side quests or activities for you to go back and complete. There are some missable achievements, so if you are an achievement hunter, that is something to look out for. But other than that, you are going to reach the end of the game, and you're gonna have an opinion of the game, and you're gonna pack it up and probably uninstall it after you're done with it. That doesn't necessarily mean that the game is bad. Sometimes you will sit down and you will enjoy a story-driven game. For example, the games mentioned before, What Remains of Edith Finch and Outer Wilds, are both top-tier story-driven games. Now, this game in particular is not top-tier, but it is a story-driven game, and if that is something that motivates you and fascinates you, and something that you basically enjoy playing, then I think you should give this game a go. It is not a very complex game, it's not a very difficult game, but you might get some enjoyment out of it.
Hi. I just feel like the veil, the death do us part, it feels very haunted, very ghosty.
I like ghosts. I'm actually very excited to be one.
Ooh, when you die, where do you want to haunt?
When I die?
Yeah, when you're a ghost, where do you want to haunt?
I guess I want to zoom over the ocean really fast.
Really, which part?
Let's start by covering the gameplay and the mechanics. In a puzzle game, in order for it to be fun, you need to have engaging puzzles, and you need to have gameplay that makes you want to solve these engaging puzzles. This game manages to have mediocre versions of both, but I still feel it's compelling enough for me to want to actually finish the game. The controls are very simple. You move around and you look around and you can interact with specific objects in the game. You cannot interact with everything. There are only a set number of objects that you can interact with in very specific ways in order to progress the story. The story itself is very linear, so you can't take the puzzles out of order. There is no traveling between worlds or anything like that. You are expected to move from point A to B to C, and then you'll see the ending, and that's it. The puzzles themselves are, I feel, not engaging in the way that you want puzzles to activate your brain, mostly because of the linearity itself. You tend to get stuck on things if you don't try to solve it in the way that's intended. So there's not a lot of creativity involved in trying to solve these puzzles, which sometimes that's fair, that's what you're looking for, but I found it to be something that I got stuck on repeatedly. I refer back to my Let's Play where you can see me get stuck several times. The manner in which you solve these puzzles are tied to the art style of the game. When you enter a new area of the game, you will most often find a smaller version of the room that you are inside of as a model in the center of the room. By taking any of the interactable objects and putting them inside of the model, you will have a giant version of that object appear right next to you in that space. In the same way, you can go to the model and you can look for the interactable object and you can take out a miniature version of it in order to have a smaller form of it. You do this, you change the size of objects in order to solve puzzles. That is what the whole game is about. It's this recursive model structure where if you look at the skybox, you can see that you are constantly inside of just a bigger model. Further on in the game, you will be able to enter the smaller model and exit the model in order to enter and exit smaller versions of the room to solve more complex puzzles. This is actually where I feel the game is most underwhelming, because there's not a lot of variation to the puzzle solving. There's not a lot of variation to the different puzzles themselves. And just when the game is starting to get a little bit more complex and just touching upon more difficult puzzles, it suddenly ends. And I think maybe that is fine in most cases. If you just want to tell your story, then this is a perfectly fine way to do it.
Hey, sorry, do you mind if I sit here while I wait for my coffee?
Oh, yeah, knock yourself out. Oh.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry, it only spilled a
I'm
little.
such a klutz. Is your sketchbook?
The graphics and visuals are some of the strongest assets in this game. I feel that the colorful worlds that you're moving in and out of are very unique, and I feel they suit the story very well. So you always feel like you're moving through the story and the worlds at the same time. They don't ever deviate from each other. You have colorful and happy places when the story is colorful and happy, and then it changes and gets moody and the environment goes gray and dark and dim. So that all felt very good to move around in. The game doesn't break any barriers when it comes to graphical performance or technical aspects, but it still feels like it's trying to tell its own story, and it's doing it really, really well. So credit where credit is due. I think it's a beautiful game, and I felt immersed in the world, also much through the story that was being told at the same time. In addition to this, the game has great audio and sound design. It has a fantastic soundtrack, and it has excellent voice acting by Bryce Dallas Howard and Seth Gable, who both voiced the only two characters of the game, which makes them even more important to the story and to the game itself. Fortunately, they do an amazing work here.
Hello, Sunflower.
Oh, good, you got beer. Thanks, hon.
Yep, decided to live a little on a weeknight.
How was school?
Great. No. It was boring. Want to watch a movie tonight?
Do you want to keep watching that?
From a technical standpoint, I feel like the game ran very smoothly. I didn't experience any frame drops or any graphical bugs or interferences. However, towards the end of the game, I did have a game-breaking bug that forced me to restart the puzzle I was on in order to solve it. Unfortunately, it took me almost an hour to figure out that the game was broken, and I was not just being stupid, because I had previously encountered a few puzzles where being stupid led to me taking longer than expected to solve the puzzles. Again, I thought I was the problem, not the game, because it had run so good up until that point. So that was a bit disappointing. Overall, I would say that I enjoyed playing Maquette. I think it's a cute story. I think it's worth playing, especially if you like other Annapurna Interactive published games. It feels very much like an Annapurna game, if that is a genre in and of itself. You are moving around this story-driven environment, and you're looking at gorgeous places to go to, and you're solving fairly easy puzzles, and it's not very long, so I urge you to give it a shot and see what you think for yourself.
Monsters and men, the places I've been.